He has abandoned the exact timeline. I think the longest timeline he's given us has been 5 weeks. He seems to have walked back from that, whatever it is. He also, rather strikingly, I thought, hinted or threatened to hit Iranian civilian infrastructure, which it's not just problematic, but I mean, that's where you're not just hitting sensitive targets or military targets, you're hitting, you know, power stations that provide energy for hospitals, that kind of thing. So that would certainly be an escalation. He also did say that Iran was going to attack within a week, which is a very specific timeline, but I haven't seen any intelligence on that. Not that I would. I mean, he didn't share any intelligence on that. So a lot of the things we maybe expected, but I'm seeing a lot of shifting timelines, shifting stories, and not a lot of clarity from President Trump.
Well, that's President Trump talking to reporters in Florida. He said that the US and Israel were winning very decisively. He said the attacks were way ahead of schedule. And he said that they had begun to launch the strikes because Iran was going to take over the Middle East. Carole Walker here. I picked up the baton from Kate Borsay. We are going to stay across President Trump's latest remarks. He's continuing to take questions from reporters. Let's talk to Anita Powell, US reporter, listening in to that. Anita, what did you make of what the president has been telling us?
Carole, I think you hit a lot of the good points. He continued to express wild confidence, or rather over-the-top confidence over U.S. operations in Iran, which are now in the 11th day, saying, you know, we're way ahead of schedule, and he has abandoned the exact timeline. I think the longest timeline he's given us has been 5 weeks. He seems to have walked back from that, whatever it is. He also, rather strikingly, I thought, hinted or threatened to hit Iranian civilian infrastructure, which it's not just problematic, but I mean, that's where you're not just hitting sensitive targets or military targets, you're hitting, you know, power stations that provide energy for hospitals, that kind of thing. So that would certainly be an escalation. He also did say that Iran was going to attack within a week, which is a very specific timeline, but I haven't seen any intelligence on that. Not that I would. I mean, he didn't share any intelligence on that. So a lot of the things we maybe expected, but I'm seeing a lot of shifting timelines, shifting stories, and not a lot of clarity from President Trump.
Yeah, I mean, he was asked very specifically, wasn't he, whether this could be over within a week. And he said, well, it's going to be very soon. He talks about everything has gone, including the leadership, but he doesn't seem to have accepted the invitation to comment on Iran's new leader.
Right. I mean, he said earlier that he wasn't very happy with the choice, who's of course the son of the killed Ayatollah, you know, hardline cleric, military experience, very close to the IRGC. These are all things that would predispose him to be very, very hostile to any American administration. But he's also then said, you know, quite cavalierly, that if they don't like the leader, then it won't work out well for them, which is a not veiled threat at all. There's nothing veiled about that threat.
It was interesting to hear him talking about why the attacks had been launched in the first place. He said that Iran was going to attack us. Unclear exactly whether he meant US military installations in the area. Iran was going to take over the whole Middle East, he said.
He also did say that Iraq was going to try to destroy Israel, which, in fairness, is a stated goal of the Iranian government. So I mean, maybe he's citing the things that he's heard Iranian leaders say in a very aspirational way, or maybe he has hard intelligence. And that's the question I have for the president today. Show me the evidence. And there's precedent for this. President Biden showed the Ukrainians and indeed the world all of the evidence that he thought they needed to see ahead of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So there is precedent to this.
And interesting at a time when the president himself is clearly under huge amount of pressure domestically over the pressure on energy prices, soaring energy prices because, of course, of the effective blockade of the Straits of Hormuz and the fact that many of those Gulf states have now curbed their production of oil. But he was stressing that the US has got plenty of oil.
Well, he's not wrong about that. The U.S. has plenty of identified sites that have not been tapped and explored, which is the decision of the free market. The, large oil companies have declined to drill and explore in those sites. This is maybe why the president met last week with the Secretary of Interior Affairs, who handles drilling inside the nation. So domestic production is not. There's a lot of potential for U.S. domestic production, and Trump has removed a lot of the guardrails, but a lot of these oil fields are not being put to purpose.
Just finally, he was asked about that attack which killed many pupils at a school in Iran right at the start of the war. There's been a growing body of evidence suggesting that it was a US missile that may have caused that. The president saying that that is now being investigated.
And I think that's the best we'll hear from now. And that is, of course, the standard line you might hear from any sort of administration, that they need to investigate that. But I mean, that is certainly going to be a very powerful mobilizing narrative, regardless of who we find was responsible, the Israelis or the Americans, in killing 156 little girls. So that is going to be a factor as this conflict continues for who knows how long.
Anita Powell, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.